Chaos at the summit. Hikers clash as huge crowds queue to reach the top of Mount Snowdon. Huge summer crowds on Mount Snowdon has sparked heated arguments among hikers, with dramatic footage showing walkers clashing over whether people should have to queue to reach the summit. Now let's go beyond the surface and reveal every layer of this story on our AI podcast.
Imagine preparing for this massive physical and mental challenge that you've been anticipating for months.
Oh, yeah. The buildup is always huge.
Right. So, you pack your gear, you lace up your boots, and you're mentally preparing for this isolation, right? This sort of rugged beauty of the wild.
Mm-hmm. You want to be alone with nature.
Exactly. So you execute this really grueling climb. I mean, your muscles are burning, you're pushing through the thin air, and you're just anticipating that one, solitary, transcendent moment of triumph at the peak.
That classic summit moment.
Yeah, a classic moment. But then you crest the final ridge, you look up, and instead of a pristine summit, you find a scene that feels honestly, like encountering a functioning traffic light in the middle of a dense rainforest.
Oh, man. What a visual.
It's just a massive, winding, totally stationary line of hundreds of people.
Which it completely shatters the entire illusion of the untamed wilderness in an instant, doesn't it?
Oh, it really does.
Because your expectation is this sweeping, romantic landscape where you are alone against the elements. But the reality is, well, it's an administrative bottleneck.
Yeah, a bottleneck.
You're suddenly thrust right back into the mundane bureaucracy of everyday society, standing shoulder to shoulder with strangers, just waiting for your turn.
Waiting in line at the top of a mountain.
Exactly.
And that surreal clash between untamed geology and, strict societal etiquette is exactly the mission of this deep dive today.
It's a fascinating topic.
It really is. So we're looking through this massive stack of recent news reports, social media footage, and some really intense interviews with hikers to try and understand the absolute chaos that is currently unfolding at the summit of Mount Snowdon in Wales.
Yeah, Snowdon is really at the center of this right now.
We're examining how a wild mountain literally transforms into a gridlocked traffic jam, and I guess what that tells us about how we interact with nature today.
Right. And to ground this analysis, the scale of the environment we're discussing here is just critical.
It's massive.
It is. Mount Snowdon is the highest mountain in Wales. It sits at 1,085 meters, which is roughly 3,560 feet. So it's not some obscure hidden gem known only to, local mountaineers.
Right. It's very famous.
It's a highly trafficked natural landmark. I mean, it attracts a staggering 600,000 visitors every single year.
600,000.
Every year.
That's just, the foot traffic alone is hard to wrap your head around.
It really is. And the sheer volume of humanity moving through that space, it creates these logistical pressures that the natural environment simply was never designed to handle.
No, of course not. And when you have 600,000 people moving through any wild space, friction is inevitable, right?
Absolutely inevitable.
But to understand the specific mechanics of how that friction turns into a literal standstill, we have to look at this highly viral flashpoint in the source material.
Yeah, that incident really kicked this whole discussion off.
It did. It's an incident that perfectly encapsulates the tension between folks who view the mountain as this wild frontier and those who view it as a structured public amenity.
Right. This happened on August 8th, and it serves as the ultimate catalyst for the current debate dominating the hiking community right now.
It really forces a conversation about the unwritten rules of outdoor recreation.
It does.
So let's set the scene for a second. On August 8th, there's a 27-year-old hiker from Manchester named Mark Screeton, and he's making the climb.
Okay.
He gets near the top, and he encounters just hundreds of walkers. And they aren't just resting or taking in the view, they are gathered just below the summit, forming a massive organized queue stretching all the way down from the final ascent.
Just a huge line.
A huge line. And the etiquette clash begins the moment Screeton observes that line, right?
Yeah.
Because instead of falling in at the back and just accepting the weight like everyone else, he decides to simply keep walking.
He just ignores it.
He bypasses the waiting hikers entirely, just moving steadily alongside the queue, going straight toward the summit marker.
Which, as you can imagine, the reaction from the crowd is immediate.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah, as he's moving past, a woman actually calls out to him, yelling, "There's a queue!"
Wow.
And it's such a deeply ingrained societal reflex, isn't it?
It is. In almost any civilized context, if you see a line, the social contract dictates that you respect it.
Right.
It's like this invisible system of fairness we all just agree to uphold.
Exactly. But Screeton responds by questioning the validity of applying that specific social contract to a geological formation.
He challenges the premise entirely.
He does. He essentially asks why a queue should even exist on a mountain at all.
Right.
So he continues his ascent. The interaction gets pretty heated. The woman insists his behavior is unfair, and Screeton maintains he isn't violating any rule because, well, the rules of the city shouldn't apply above the clouds.
That's a bold stance to take in front of hundreds of tired people.
It is. But he reaches the summit marker, he touches the metal plate, and then he just heads back down.
And he actually later defended his actions publicly, making it very clear that his bypass was not aggressive.
Right, he made a point of that.
Yeah, he said he didn't push anyone, he didn't barge through a crowd, and he waited until there was enough physical space to safely step up to the top. His core argument is basically philosophical. He says mountains are part of nature. They shouldn't operate like man-made attractions where visitors are expected to, take a mental ticket and wait in an orderly file.
Right, like you're at a deli counter or something.
Exactly. And according to his account, he wasn't the only one doing this. Other hikers were applying the exact same logic, just bypassing the queue just to quickly touch the marker and leave.
Which, that defense is a complete rejection of the silent agreement made by the hundreds of people standing in that line.
Totally.
The people queuing have decided that fairness and order must be maintained, even in the wild. But Screeton decided that the wild inherently nullifies those structures.
Okay, let's unpack this logic.
Let's do it.
Because I understand the romantic desire to experience nature on its own terms, free from the rigid structures of modern life, nobody wants to feel like they are waiting at the DMV when they're 3,000 feet in the air.
No, definitely not.
But if we follow Screeton's philosophy to its natural conclusion, if all 300 people in that line abandon the queue and simultaneously rush the final peak because it's nature, doesn't that immediately create the exact chaotic, potentially dangerous situation he's trying to escape?
That pushes us right into the philosophical divide at the heart of this controversy. What's fascinating here is it forces us to define what reaching the summit actually means in the modern era.
Right. What is the goal?
Historically, reaching a summit meant conquering the altitude, arriving at the general plateau, and taking in the panoramic view from the highest vicinity. Right?
It's being up there.
Exactly. But the modern definition has narrowed significantly. It has become hyper-fixated on a very specific physical interaction.
Touching the marker.
Yes. Taking your turn to physically touch the man-made metal summit marker installed at the absolute highest point.
Because if the goal is simply to be at the top of the mountain, there's plenty of room for everyone to spread out and enjoy the achievement.
Tons of room.
But if the definition of success requires touching one singular small piece of metal, a bottleneck isn't just likely, it's a mathematical certainty.
It is. And that hyperfixation is the sole reason these lines are forming. And it explains why they are growing to such unmanageable lengths.
It's wide.
The queue is not for the mountain. The queue is for the marker.
That is such a crucial distinction. And the wait times detailed in the reports, they are just staggering.
They are intense.
If a hiker arrives at the summit around midday, which is, the peak window for day trippers, they can expect to stand in line for up to an hour just to climb the final steps to that pillar.
An hour.
An hour of standing completely still, totally exposed to the elements after exhausting yourself on the ascent.
It's brutal.
And the sources note this is an escalation. Just back in 2023, the reported wait times were closer to 45 minutes. So the congestion is visibly compounding year over year.
And consider the physical toll of that wait.
Yeah.
Hikers have spent hours burning energy, their heart rates are elevated, their body temperatures are high, and then suddenly they hit this administrative roadblock.
They just stop.
They stop moving completely. Their adrenaline crashes, they're exposed to harsh mountain winds, and they're surrounded by hundreds of other tired, potentially frustrated people.
It sounds miserable.
The psychological transition from conquering a physical challenge to enduring a monotonous wait is really jarring.
And the visual of that transition is so extreme that it has actually spawned an entire genre of social media content.
Oh yeah, it's everywhere online.
The source material highlights this footage posted by Trekking Tom Experiences, showing the seemingly endless, slow-moving stream of people just snaking down the rocky trail.
It looks crazy.
It does, and you read the comments or you watch TikTok creators who document their hike all the way up, see the massive line, and literally turn around and walk away without finishing.
They just give up.
Yeah, they describe the scene as giving off, quote, Everest traffic jam vibes.
Everest traffic jam vibes. That phrase is an incredibly potent cultural shorthand
It really paints a picture.
because we are all familiar with those alarming photographs from Mount Everest,
Yeah.
where climbers in massive down suits are bottlenecked on a precarious, icy ridge.
Right.
Now, Snowdon is obviously not Everest.
No.
The altitude, the oxygen levels, and the sheer mortality risk are entirely different. But the visual of human congestion on a mountain peak triggers the exact same underlying anxiety. It highlights the absurdity of mass-producing an extreme, isolated experience.
Here's where it gets really interesting, I think. It's similar to the phenomenon of visiting the Louvre to see the Mona Lisa.
Well, that's a great comparison.
Right. People travel from all over the world, but they don't just want to be in the museum, and they don't want to merely appreciate the painting from the back of the room.
No, they want the proof.
Exactly. The objective is to navigate the crowd, stand directly in front of the glass, and take a photograph to definitively prove they were there.
Yes.
And on Snowdon, the experience of the altitude or the view has almost become secondary. The primary objective is to acquire the digital receipt of the conquest, the highly specific photo at the pillar.
Just like the Mona Lisa.
Yeah. And that need for photographic proof brings the entire ecosystem of the mountain to a complete standstill.
That analogy perfectly captures the shift in how we consume natural spaces today. And the bottleneck is really a product of several converging factors.
Okay, like what?
Well, first you have Snowdon's inherent accessibility.
Right.
Unlike many major European alpine peaks, a summer ascent of Snowdon does not require specialized mountaineering gear like crampons, ropes, or an ice axe. It is clearly established, well-trodden routes.
So almost anyone can do it.
Basically, yeah. And second, human behavior is remarkably predictable when driven by weather.
Oh, sure. A sunny day changes everything.
Exactly. A clear, sunny weekend forecast acts as a mass signal. Thousands of people independently make the identical decision to tackle the mountain. And because human walking speeds are relatively consistent, they all converge on the summit the exact same time, which is usually midday.
Midday, right. And then the final massive accelerant to that convergence is the algorithm.
Oh, without a doubt.
Because the influence of platforms like Instagram and TikTok simply cannot be overstated here.
The algorithmic influence creates this fascinating self-perpetuating loop.
How so?
Well, a hiker goes up, experiences the frustrating crowds, and posts a video complaining about the Everest traffic jams, right?
I agree.
Because the visual is so shocking and goes against our expectations of nature, the video goes viral. It gets millions of views. But instead of deterring people, that massive exposure acts as a global advertisement.
Ah, I see.
It places Snowdon on the radar of millions of users who might not have previously considered hiking it.
Right.
It normalizes the mountain as a mainstream cultural touchstone, which inevitably attracts even more people who want to participate in the trend and secure their own photo at the pillar.
So the complaint essentially functions as a billboard.
Exactly.
The attempt to criticize the crowd actively recruits the next wave of the crowd.
It's incredibly ironic.
It is. And knowing that massive volume and hour-long bottlenecks are now just the reality of a summer summit, a fierce debate emerges in the source material regarding how we actually govern ourselves in these spaces.
Yes, the etiquette debate.
It's a classic collision between prioritizing collective safety and preserving individual freedom.
And this debate deeply fractures the outdoor community. You have those on the pro-Q side of the argument who prioritize order, predictability, and harm reduction in an environment that is inherently unpredictable.
Right, like hiker Lucy Taylor, who
Yes.
was interviewed by BBC Wales for one of our sources. She articulates the pro-queue stance purely from a logistical standpoint.
Okay.
She argues that queuing is simply the safest and fairest solution available. The terrain at the summit is not a flat, paved plaza, right?
No, it's rocky.
It's uneven, it's rocky, and it's exposed. So when you have hundreds of people concentrated in a very small area, with walkers trying to navigate past each other in opposite directions, the risk of a misstep is really high.
It's dangerous.
Yeah, without the orderly structure of a line, she argues, overcrowding transitions from just an annoyance to a genuine physical danger.
And that logistical perspective is strongly reinforced by the authorities who are actually tasked with managing the landscape.
The wardens.
Yeah. Ellen Jones, an area warden for the Erie National Park Authority, has issued official pleas for hikers to be considerate, to respect the queues, and to behave responsibly.
So they are officially pro-queue.
Yes. Park wardens view the queue not as an infringement on freedom, but as a necessary mechanism of crowd control.
That makes sense from their position.
Plus, they are managing secondary hazards that scale with crowd size.
Like what?
Well, when thousands of people are stationary on a mountain, you see massive spikes in litter.
Oh, of course.
And during hot, dry spells, the risk of devastating wildfires increases exponentially. So for the wardens, organized behavior mitigates environmental degradation.
But then you contrast that with the anti-Q perspective, which is equally passionate.
Very passionate.
Tina Millard, another hiker featured in the reports, bluntly states that Snowdon is a mountain, not a theme park attraction.
Right.
The core of her argument is that nobody holds the deed to the summit. A geological formation should not be subjected to the organized queuing systems we use for, like, roller coasters or grocery stores.
Which highlights a profound shift in the purpose of outdoor recreation.
How do you mean?
Are these spaces meant to be arenas for personal challenge and communion with nature on an individual's terms? Or have they transitioned into shared, mass participation experiences where societal rules just have to govern behavior?
Well, put yourself in the position of a park warden for a moment. You're standing on that peak, looking out at a crowd of hundreds.
Okay.
This isn't a homogeneous group of seasoned mountaineers who know how to navigate technical terrain and self-regulate.
No, it's a mix.
You are looking at a highly volatile mix. You have serious climbers mixed with casual tourists wearing inappropriate footwear, families wrangling young children, and teenagers focused entirely on their phone screens.
A recipe for disaster.
Right. So in that specific scenario, isn't enforcing a polite, orderly line, even if it ruins the romantic illusion of the wild, simply the most effective way to prevent a catastrophic accident in a crowd crush?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the modern park authority is grappling with a radically shifting demographic.
Right.
For decades, the primary users of these mountains were experienced enthusiasts who understood mountain etiquette, they possessed the right gear, and they knew how to assess risk.
The hardcore hikers.
Exactly. Snowdon, however, has transitioned from a niche outdoor pursuit into a mainstream tourism destination.
Yeah.
So when you blend highly experienced individuals seeking untamed freedom with casual visitors who rely on the structured safety of everyday society, friction is unavoidable.
It's going to happen.
And the wardens cannot alter the physical dimensions of the summit to accommodate the volume. So their only recourse is to attempt to manage human behavior.
But managing the behavior of 600,000 people across a massive open landscape is a nearly impossible mandate.
It really is.
So what does this all mean? Where does this leave a listener who actually wants to engage with the outdoors?
That's the real question.
Right. Suppose someone wants the physical exhaustion of a steep climb and the reward of a stunning view, but they absolutely refuse to spend an hour shuffling forward in a line at 3,000 feet. What actionable advice does the source material offer?
The sources actually provide some clear tactical strategies for bypassing the congestion, provided you're willing to adapt.
Okay.
The most critical factor, if you are determined to climb Snowdon specifically, is timing.
Timing is everything.
Arriving on a sunny Saturday afternoon in August is a guarantee of gridlock. Visitors are advised to plan for extremely early morning ascents, target their trips for midweek days, and actively avoid the peak summer holiday weekends entirely.
So you really have to thread the needle of the off hours.
You do.
Essentially, you must intentionally disrupt your own schedule to avoid the predictable schedules of the masses.
That's one way to put it, yeah.
But beyond just changing the alarm clock, the sources suggest that the geography itself offers a solution. Are there locations in Wales that provide the scale and beauty without the infrastructure of a tourist trap?
Yes. The sources specifically point to the Cambrian Mountains as a prime alternative.
Oh, nice.
They offer the dramatic, sweeping Walsh scenery that hikers are looking for, but they attract a fraction of the foot traffic compared to globally recognized names like Snowdonia or Eryri and the Brecon Beacons.
Less crowds, same beauty.
Exactly. The consensus among experienced hikers in the provided forums is that the wilderness experience still exists in abundance. You simply have to be willing to step slightly off the heavily marketed tourist trails and explore the less famous but equally punishing neighboring peaks.
So the overarching takeaway from these reports is kind of a complex double-edged sword, really.
How so?
Well, on a macro level, it is a tremendous net positive that massive numbers of people are seeking out the natural world, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Increased engagement with the outdoors means more people are exercising, they're appreciating environmental beauty, and theoretically developing a desire to protect these spaces.
That's the hope.
But the downside, the price of popularity, is the death of spontaneity at these major landmarks.
It really is.
The days of simply waking up on a nice Saturday, driving to a famous mountain, and having a peaceful hike are largely over. Accessing tranquility now requires rigorous logistical planning.
And the tragedy highlighted in the source material is that the failure to plan for these crowds often ruins the primary objective of the trip in the first place.
Right.
People seek out these mountains to escape the pressure, the noise, and the interpersonal conflicts of urban life.
Just to get away from it all.
But because of the sheer volume of visitors, those exact urban stressors are replicated at the summit.
Yeah.
The tension over queue jumping, the frustration over limited parking, and the dismay at seeing litter on a trail mean that instead of finding peace, visitors find themselves arguing with strangers about fairness while standing in a cloud.
It's so true. We literally dragged the very societal structures we're trying to escape right up the side of the mountain with us.
We really do.
We've spent this deep dive examining a really fascinating cultural collision. We see the reality of modern algorithm-driven crowds treating a natural wonder as an organized attraction where strict etiquette keeps thousands of people safe. And pushing against that, we see the enduring romantic ideal of the mountain as an untamed frontier where freedom should reign over bureaucracy.
And as global tourism continues to grow and social media continues to market natural wonders to broader audiences, this specific clash between freedom and management is just going to replicate itself at national parks and summits worldwide.
It's inevitable, which leaves us with one final provocative scenario to consider based on the evidence.
Okay, let's hear it.
Because the source material makes it abundantly clear that the physical terrain of the mountain is not the primary cause of the hour-long bottleneck.
Right, it's not the mountain itself.
No. The bottleneck is almost entirely driven by the intense human need to photographically document touching one specific man-made metal summit marker.
It is the ultimate digital proof of conquest.
Exactly. So imagine the park authorities hike up there tomorrow night with heavy tools and completely remove that metal marker. They just erase the focal point.
Wow.
Would the massive hour-long queues instantly dissolve because there is no longer a definitive finish line to photograph? Or is our modern psychology so deeply conditioned by the mechanics of tourist attractions that the crowd would simply select an arbitrary rock nearby, declare it the new objective, and begin lining up?
Okay, one question for you. Do you think hikers should be expected to wait patiently in a long queue to reach the summit marker of Mount Snowdon? Or should everyone be free to climb to the top whenever there is enough space to do so safely? Don't forget to comment it. Thanks.